what we saw at the Seoul Biennale for Architecture and Urbanism. It was a great opportunity. It started off with a residency that happened at Utsha by a Seoul-based artist called In Young-gyo. She wanted to do this project called the Three-Way Dialogue, where she wanted to bring together Seoul, Hamburg, and Bhubaneswar in a conversation around urban challenges that are happening in the cities. All the three cities had different kinds of urban pressures, and they had different kinds of responses to it. And she did some site-based community interviews in Bhubaneswar that were displayed at the Dongdaemun Design Plaza in Seoul. So we got an opportunity to put together a team, a very interesting team actually, a team which had an artist, a filmmaker, and a town planner from BDA, and I went there as a project manager for the team, and we participated in various events. Now you will see a video of what we did there when during the lunchtime. We'll play that. But I want to give you a few snippets of what we saw when we were at the Biennale, looking at all the exhibits of what the cities were going through, and what we experienced as a group as we walked around in Seoul. And possibly lessons that I want to draw out from there that would be relevant to this crowd and to the discussions that are going to happen in the workshop. So as I was saying, there were three groups, Seoul, Hamburg, and Bhubaneswar, that were participating in it. And the topic that was given to us was communities and solidarity in flux. So with urbanism, as the cities are changing, as they're coming under stress, one of the key focuses of this entire Biennale was, what does it do to communities? What happens when migration increases into a city? What happens when there's not enough housing? 36% of Bhubaneswar lives in slums. It is something that is not often recorded in public view, but it is a fact. So what can art and culture and what can conscious and conscientious people who are in urban planning and what artists can do to actually make a city more socially inclusive and welcoming? That was some of the focus areas, but each of the three cities had different issues. While Hamburg was struggling with gentrification, Bhubaneswar had other issues to deal with, and Seoul had other issues to deal with as a city that was transitioning really rapidly from a traditional city into a Western city. So they were like losing touch with their original traditions because they were trying to become Western really fast. That was their concern. So it was a bit of a scale in which we all discussed our individual problems, and there were lessons that I'm going to share as we move along in this conversation. Very effective panel talk. So there were four people I was mentioning. We had a national award-winning filmmaker, Lipika Singh Darai, who presented a beautiful movie. I'll show clippings of it during the lunch period, called Konkyo and Sappo, which is Dragonfly and the Snake, about the pressures of urbanism when somebody moves in from a rural area into an urban area. Real challenge. If you really look at the stats, migration into Bhubaneswar has grown over 80% year on year, and gets accentuated as you have problems in the countryside. So your city is not in isolation. It actually exists in a wider ecosystem, right? We had Sujit Malik, who made a beautiful performance in the Shinyang market called the Pulse Feeder, where he tried to draw out questions of consumption and materialism and how that was affecting the way we live our lives and the challenges of sustainability that are there. Suparna and I participated in the panel talk, which I just mentioned. So it was a very wholesome and rounded kind of experience that we had, where we saw visual artists, architects, filmmakers, planners all get together and start to really look at what does it mean to live in a city, your city, my city, all of our cities. What does it really mean, and how can we actually affect some change in it? Now, these are the events that we participated in. The photograph that you see there is actually in a small slum near the Utsha Foundation, where she conducted an interview where she questioned the lifestyles and where the migration was happening, where people were coming in a setup. That installation that you see is an example of the angles that you see in a city. The triangles, the squares, everything that forms the structure of a city, and how people trapped in it respond to its pressures. So the interview was focused on that. So it was a very relevant topic for all the people who were there at that point. And this was played at the Dongdaemun Design Plaza, which is the main exhibition arena. Right, I'll just say a few highlights. So we saw a lot of exhibits. We saw exhibits from Mexico City, San Diego, everybody was there. Right. So I think some of the key highlights that I wanted to point out where all the cities were struggling with this. Number one is changing demographics. Whether it be aging populations, whether it be migration from either rural areas or from other countries, everybody was struggling to try to build a city where it's socially inclusive and bringing everybody together to live and celebrate life. Very, very hard thing to do. And there were all these projects which each city was coming up with trying to fix that. Now the other bit was social inclusiveness. So you have all these demographics, and how do you bring these people to actually live life and enjoy it? It's not enough to provide housing, food and shelter. It's something more, to be a part of a city, to be part of a community. I think that was another issue that everybody was grappling with. Environmental sustainability and climate change was a huge issue. We had the curator of the Shanghai Biennale who came and said, we can have, I'm just going to use Donald Trump as a fall guy here. We can have this idea of saying America first, but if America is going to use this idea of looking at themselves, you'll have challenges in climate issues where you'll have flooding somewhere else in the US. So you can look inside, but you're really part of a larger ecosystem and you cannot deny it. Right? So a lot of cities were responding to these challenges. Chennai was responding to the flooding. And they had all these different artists create these beautiful exhibits showing what happens when waters come into your house and what kind of destruction happens in that place. And finally, despite all this morbid discussion, there was these opportunities that new technology provided, which I think is relevant to the smart city. We are changing into a smart city. We are going to use technology in a big way in the future. But besides that, we have to address these very strong people and community-related issues where I think heart is required, where I think art and culture has a big role to play. So I think this was a consistent theme that was there. Now, in our wanderings, we saw a lot of things in Seoul, right, which was very heartening to see. So this is a very interesting project which the Seoul city took up. It's called the Chong Restoration Project. This used to be a stream, a beautiful stream that ran right in the middle of the city. City grew, it became an open sewer. A lot of our friends around here would have lived in cities where you can identify open sewers, right? So what did the city do? They buried it under a slab of concrete. Then they built a freeway over it, right? And for many years, nobody knew that there was this beautiful stream running right in the middle of downtown Seoul. And then they launched a project called the Chong Restoration Project where they ripped up the concrete and they let the stream flow. And they built these beautiful sidewalks where people could sit, participate, families could come, you would have art installations. And believe me, when I walked by that place, it was this amazing location where people were getting together. Communities were getting together, viewing art, viewing, what art can do for you as a community in that area. Amazing project. You walk around in Seoul, there are public art projects everywhere. Beautiful public spaces everywhere. I mean, not even, expensive things. Like you see those stairs, somebody was thoughtful enough to kind of fold a bit of fiberglass and cardboard and put it there so people could sit. You don't have to be expensive to do some of these things. You just have to be thoughtful. You have this idea, there's a bylaw in the Seoul city which says 1% of all commercial buildings that are built in the city should invest their 1% of the budget in a public art project. Now there are two sides to it. You have beautiful public artworks all over the place. You also have some really bad ones, but you really have to be conscious about who is managing that. So I heard both sides of the story. People said, these amazing works, and some said, we've just been given works that we don't like. But there is a thought. It's not about building a building. It's about building a city. It's just harmonious that way, right? So moving from public art to the community angle that we're there. So this is an area where we actually did a lot of work. It's called the Hebangchon community. It was another area which was a bit of a slum. It grew in the 1960s as a knitwear community. There's a lot of knitting happening there. And then it was hit by demographics. People aged, right? The knitting, the guys used to knit, they started, shutting down their shops. There was an immediate decline in the way that place was looking. So there was an intervention. Instead of kind of demolishing the entire place and coming up with, let's say, a high-rise or another place to live, what they did is they started promoting the existing community there. They established a community center. They converted some of the houses and started bringing in young apprentices to work downstairs. And they revitalized the knitwear and artisan business. Now it's a thriving community with a very different character from Seoul. If you go to Seoul, it's all high-rise buildings. But this one area is throbbing with community life. Very different intervention. And the final one, which was very interesting for us, because it's the other end of the scale, Gangviertel in Hamburg. So this is a historic quarter, beautiful buildings right in the middle of Hamburg, which had all these high-rises. And the idea was, okay, this place is falling apart, let's just destroy it. So what did artists do? Artists walked in one day and just took over the entire place. They called it a summer festival, but actually it was a takeover. It was a militant takeover. But what the city did was even more interesting. They said, we're not going to intervene. Do what you want with this place. And today that place is a thriving, creative cluster People are gathering there every day to come and exchange ideas. The beautiful art installations. There's a summer festival happening. So this is an artistic intervention which was proactive, which came from nowhere, but the city said, go ahead and do it, which has now turned Hamburg into one of the more attractive cities in Germany in terms of the kind of creative economy that has come up around it. Another way where you can look at art and culture. So one of the reasons I'm showing all this is when I had this opportunity to go to the Seoul Biennale, I didn't want us to limit about thinking art and culture is only going to create beautiful public art projects or museums or spaces. There is a tremendous power to it if you use it strategically, if you use it to build a city that you want to live in and the communities that exist in it. And these are certain opportunities which I saw was very important. And the relevance to Bhubaneswar's growth, I just jotted down a few points which I shared in the panel talk there. Whereas urban planning today has never had some real hard-on engagements with the citizens with real empathy. A survey is not empathy. A survey is just a superficial connection. Building change requires working with people and with empathy, and there's no better tool or no better use of art and culture than that. And there are amazing examples of creative placemaking, which I shared in some of your reference materials that are there. A focus on top-down central planning, which we're engaging in right now, tends to leave art and culture in the periphery. It is a fact. And one of the things that was acknowledged in many of the panel talks was this is the first time we're hearing you proposing a seminar where you're getting artists and planners right in the beginning of a planning cycle for a city. It is a great opportunity that you have at this moment. And in a city like Bhubaneswar, which is very rooted in its culture, we call in Odia, we call Baro Maso Tero Parva. We have so many festivals, mechanical solidarity of rituals that happen all the time. You cannot build a city that is divorced from this. Even if we are not religious, we go out and celebrate these beautiful festivals. That's when people come together, right? So that is something that you really have to focus on when you look at your urban planning. And that's an opportunity which we have today. Contemporary, as Professor Jain was saying, is not just living in the contemporary world, having that consciousness of everything around you and how that's relevant and how you can build on the foundations of your traditions. And I think the most important thing that we have today, which we should build on, I mean, there are a lot of risks and challenges and all of that, but I think what we have today is a proliferation of youth in this city. If you look at the demographic stats, this is one of the youngest capital cities in India. There is high literacy. There's availability of abundant creative talent. I can vouch for that because I work for a foundation where I meet amazing creative people every day. You have the raw materials, you have the opportunity, you have the vision to do something interesting. I think the next 2 days, we as a collective group have an opportunity to craft something that is really interesting and drive us forward. That thought and that thinking is why this eclectic and amazing constellation of individuals are here right now. And we should not lose out on this opportunity. So that's my little speech on the Seoul update. And with this, I'd just like to move on to what we're doing in the afternoon. All of you have received kits, which you might have in front of you. So one of the reasons we wanted to do this is with this thinking, we wanted to solicit ideas from all of you. Ideas need home. Ideas need a structure to be relevant. We didn't want a verbal diarrhea of ideas that would not go anywhere and would not make any sense. So we came up with a framework because we're that structured, right? So I'm just going to walk you through the framework. Please have patience. And I'll show you what we're going to do in the afternoon. It is a beautiful exercise. I've done this several times in the past. But it's an exercise with optimism. You have to go into this exercise with a significant amount of optimism. And I'm just going to skip through here. Blue sky. Think you have no restrictions. Think you have all the resources you need. Think that you want to build a dream. That's what visioning is today. So we're going to build a dream today. And we're not going to restrict ourselves with what we have seen in the past. That in this city we have planned things, they've remained on paper, they've never become reality. I want you to go ahead and build a dream of what you want Bhubaneswar to be, a dream of what art and culture can do for your city. So do not limit yourselves. We'll split you into 4 groups. The groups have been thought together with a lot of attention because they include architects, artists, writers, intellectuals, people who work in the social space. So we've put a lot of thought in putting those groups together because we want a really, cohesive idea coming out of it, right? So feel free to ask questions at any point of time, but here's the framework. What you want to do today is create a vision. And in your kits, I think on page number 5, you have the vision outlined. If you want to flip to that page, it'll be just easier for us to walk through this. What we'll do is we'll walk through the framework and then we can go for questions. Yeah, for anybody who doesn't have kits, please contact us and we'll have kits given to you. There's plenty of kits out there. Just have a few minutes of patience. I'll walk you through this. So what you have in the first triangle that's right up there is a vision. What is the desired end goal of the art and culture program that we want to outline in the longer term? And what are the 4 goals that we want that are going to go along with this vision? That's all you have to do today. Come up with a statement. I want Bhubaneswar to be this. I want the art and culture program in Bhubaneswar to create a socially inclusive city, a city that's going to be welcoming to tourists and residents alike. I want my city to be the best. Doesn't matter. Just go ahead with it. Each of the groups will have to come up with a vision statement, and they will present it to the other 3 groups. Besides the vision, you'll have to come up with 4 goals. Goals that make sense. Okay, if this is what I want to do, if this is the vision that I have, what are the 4 goals that I need to have with it? Any 4 goals. You'll have facilitators who will walk you through this as you go through this exercise. I'll give you some examples. I picked one from Houston, right? The vision for the city of Houston Arts and Cultural Plan is to foster an environment in which art and culture flourish for the sharing and benefit of all residents and visitors. If you look at this, the focus is not about building and creating new things. It's about facilitating. Let's create that environment and build that stadium and people will come. Create that environment and things will happen. So the focus is very clear. They understand they have a lot of artists. They understand they have the resources. All they want to do is create an environment. That's their vision. Our vision could be completely different. Maybe we don't have this cultural ecosystem that we're talking about that fosters artists. That's why we have a lot of artists leaving and going to Delhi or Bombay. So maybe that's what we need to focus on. But that's a discussion that you guys want to have. Now, if you have that as a vision, what will be a goal? A goal will be to promote engagement in quality arts and cultural programming. Develop strategies to deliver art and culture programs, art education, public art in the neighborhoods. So, give the education, promote the arts, have grants going out to people. That makes sense because, then you are giving the kind of the juice to build the environment that comes along with it. So it's very relevant to the goal. So if you want to build a city in Bhubaneswar where the art and culture program is going to create a welcoming environment for citizens coming from outside, then one of the goals could be that we want to have a very comprehensive people engagement program for people who are coming from the rural areas, a community center in slums that people will go in and log in. It could be anything. So feel free to come up with these 4 goals, and you'll be facilitated through it. Just to give you a last point on this, that's the vision which has been shared with us very kindly by the BUKC. That's what they want Bhubaneswar to become. And that's what art and culture can help us become actually. A transit-oriented city, a livable city, a child-friendly city, a city that is in harmony with the environment, and a city which is a regional economic center that attracts tourism. So you see there are several strands. There's several strands that you can pull on to think about what you want art and culture to do for your city. I'm not saying the answers are going to fall into our lap right away, but we're all going to work together. We're going to come up with something really interesting. And that'll be the focus of the exercise in the afternoon. And we'll move on to projects tomorrow. So if you have any questions, sorry, I've rambled on for a while. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me right now.
First point is drainage system and the water management. Particularly in the rainy season, when there is a heavy rainfall, there is roads and even some of the buildings also flooded with the water. In our twin city, Kotak, it was earlier in Kotak also. But now we are seeing in Bhubaneswar, this is the most important problem. And just like in the road, 3 feet, 4 feet standing water. So that is the most problem as regards to the climate change is concerned. So how will face this problem? How will solve this problem?
Question that's absolutely relevant in your working groups that you should look at. So again, let's go back to why we are here. to answer that question in context. So I think the reason we are here is to look at what art and culture can do to this city and the issues that we are facing. The issue that you've highlighted right now is a challenge for all the citizens. So what do you think art and culture can do to help that? Is the question you have to ask yourself and to your group.
Yes.
What are the first answers that come to your mind?
My point is that to solve these problems, our drainage system should be improved. And particularly the closed drainage system. If you do open drainage system, then there is chances that many debris will be, people will be putting in the drains.
Yeah.
So that also choking the drains.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think what you're suggesting is a hard infrastructure solution, which is not wrong.
Yeah.
But look at it from the context of what you ask yourself. What do you think art and culture can do for it?
Oh, Utsha.
Because this is an art and culture visioning workshop. What do you think art and culture? So one of the immediate obvious answers could be awareness.
Yeah.
You want to raise awareness? Fine, you can use art and culture for that.
Yeah.
But those are the key questions that you might want to discuss in your group to say, what do you think art and culture can do to help you, bring out some of the challenges that you're facing in your life?
Yes, that problem.
Just keep it in context today, because there are many urban planning problems, and my friends here from the BUKC can list out a whole bunch.
Yeah.
But again, you have to go back and think. And this is a visioning workshop, and in this visioning workshop, we have to think at a place where we can think, how can this become a city that we all want to participate and live in? And what you're talking about is one issue, which we'll get to. But it is a symptom of a larger issue that you have to talk about today.
I will supplement that issue with a little bit. Those of us who grew up in the 70s in Bhubaneswar remember that there was no waterlogging. The natural drainage was such that the water drained away after the heaviest of rains and the city was left sparkling clean. Most of you who grew up here in the 70s would remember that.
Yeah.
So, this is an outcome. What you see today is an outcome of urban planning not having addressed the natural strengths of this city, aquifers, natural creeks, waterbed, all of that. So, but that's the larger context, and which is why we are here, which is what we are here to talk about things that have changed for good, things that have not changed, and things that have changed that are negative. So, and how do we address it together as citizens and administrators and the roles that we play in our lives every day?
Smart city, smart action plan. But as you know that we all are in communication world. And there are different artists and our student, our next generation, they are also in an international field. So I should request you that the communication should be built up more to make awareness among our next generation and to the people to participate. Whatever exercises like January, whatever the thing going on from your side, some people are not aware about it. It is not communicated, although they are present in Bhubaneswar. It's not a grievance. I try to communicate to you. Artists always have a freedom. Let us maintain that freedom to build our Bhubaneswar more beautiful and move towards the smart city.
Okay.
Thank you.
These 4 goals could be independent of each other? Or
Absolutely. They just should be aligned to what you want the city to do. So the vision and the alignment should be there. That's the
They must issue out of the vision and should be related to the vision, but
Absolutely.
that could be independent.
Yeah.
Sandeep, it was a wonderful presentation. I have only one question to ask you, a
Yes.
specific question. The cities that you mentioned, most of the cities Bhubaneswar is being compared to, or the models that we can absorb and use, those are actually upstarts industrial cities. I think Bhubaneswar is not comparable to any of the cities that have been mentioned here. I want an identity for my city. How do you give me the identity? Because most of us haven't discussed yet what is Bhubaneswar really. You say beloved city. Is it the beloved city? What is the soul of Bhubaneswar? You call it temple city, but what is the soul of the temples that we have? So the first question, there are hundreds of questions that will come up in the use of art and culture. But one question, whether we can give Bhubaneswar an identity so that it's not like Seoul, it is not like Singapore, it's not like Hamburg, not like Houston, but itself. Can we think of that? Have you given any thoughts to that? I have many ideas, but if opportunity comes, that could be discussed. But first of all, tell me whether Bhubaneswar should have an identity of its own, and if that is so, then what exactly could be the formation of those ideas in the context of use of art in the smart city of Bhubaneswar. Before you organize this particular meeting, there should have been a little brainstorming as to what is Bhubaneswar. Many of you who have not lived in Bhubaneswar, many of you who do not know really the Bhubaneswar, the ethnicity and the spirituality and the construction of Bhubaneswar, the background of the history, the archaeology, the sculptures, the society that works here, moves here. Now, let me remind you and to the august audience here. Recently, you might be familiar with Giorgio Agamben, the man who is writing from Latin America somewhere. He says that with increasing computerization, with the increasing digitalization of the society, we are fast heading into a society which is going to be exclusive and not inclusive. In other words, you can live in your room, get all the services that you want. You would not be interested in becoming a part of the community. You can live without knowing your neighbor. If exclusivity is the goal of a rapidly advancing industrialized society, what kind of community movement are we thinking of unless we establish an identity for the city itself? So, the question of identity, the first question you must handle before you go into the smart city idea. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a very good question, and it's a question that I hope you guys will all discuss in the work groups today. It'll be a starting point. And all we have...
So, do you expect each of the work groups to come up with 4 goals?
Yes, please.
Each of them?
Yeah. So what will happen
Yeah.
in the afternoon is that each of the work groups will have a vision, will have 4 goals, and they will present to each other in a plenary, and we will, together, as a team, come to a consensus of what we'll take forward tomorrow, where we can come up with projects, pilot projects to prove each of those goals.
And this consensus happens today?
This consensus hopefully will happen today.
Okay.
Questions? Last question, please. I think everyone's getting a little hungry, and there's been a smell of food in this room.
गोटे सिटी को देखा आपन को गोटे टोटल तार पुराना माने जो पुराना स्ट्रक्चर अच्छी कि एबे जो नुआ स्ट्रक्चर है टोटल ताको बुलिवा दरकार ताको पूरा डिटेल ले आपन देखिया दरकार अदरवाइज बसी के घर भीतर बसी की टोटली सब सब प्लान कले भी सेति की फ्रूटफुल होबन कि सेति जिंस हेई परिबन मत लागो
Good question, but you have to start somewhere. Any of this exercise, जहाँ भी हेची आज भी exercise जोटा होची, it is a start, it's a journey. मुझको नहीं आज सब आंसर बाहरी हो कि काली सब प्रोजेक्ट हो और जितनी एटी समस्ते बस चनी समस्ते केबे ना केबे किछि ना किछि बोली जंती आउ इंडिविजुअल ऑपरेटी केबे डिपेंडेंट होनु हमें कलेक्टिव समस्ते मिसी की बसियो समस्ते मिसी कथा हो हम भाबछि हम समस्ते मिसी की बसले समस्तंकर किछि ना किछि एक्सपीरियंस शेयर हो आउ एई भलिया प्रोजेक्ट रे सब बेले एटा देयर आर 4 or 5 phases. This is the first phase. We've gotten a really interesting group together आरंभ करिया पे. Maybe this is not the end. Well, let's start, or we'll keep talking all the time. That's the answer. All right, I just want to flip to the last bit, which is the ground rules. Because I know there's a lot of very interesting people in this room and everybody has had a lot of experience. So, all of you have lovely mobile phones, Blackberries, or whatever you have, iPhones. Please switch them off during the working groups. I'm sure everybody wants to hear from you, but let's keep it down for 3 hours, okay? We'll try to finish on time. I think we're right now on schedule. If we start at lunch at 1 o'clock, we'll start at 2 o'clock. We'll be on time. It won't be a problem. Please be one speaker at a time, because if all got opinions, try not to do some crosstalk, And we'll have a parking lot. If you feel you have something to say and someone else is speaking, please go to the parking lot and write your things. Whoever is your table lead will go back, look at those points, and come back and have that discussion. So you'll always be heard. No one will not be heard. There are no wrong questions at any time. Feel free to ask questions. This is the whole point of the brainstorming. Ask any question you want, as long as it's relevant to the whole point. There's no judgment of ideas. Everybody's idea is respected. Please keep to that. And collaboration is key. Energy is vital. Be collaborative, be energetic. But let's all get together and have a really fruitful session in the afternoon, because this will be the beginning of something really interesting. I think we're very interesting people in this room for that. We'll put it up. I'll put it up on the screen so you can always see it all the time. All right. Thank you, everyone, for a beautiful session in the morning. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.